The Spin-off Podcast Network.
K-pop to me means more than just listening to music. It's learning to be myself.
The Spin-off's new documentary, K-Pollies, follows 3 Pacific youth obsessed with K-pop. In a one-off documentary, see what they've found in Korean pop culture and how they bridge it with their own.
When you start dressing, looking different, everyone side-eyes you. But in K-pop, they're just like, no, like celebrate yourself.
Watch K-Pollies today at thespinoff.co.nz/videos. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by Spark Lab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about Spark Lab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spin-off with help from Callaghan Innovation. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
Today's guest is a pioneer in organics, sustainable business, and has won awards for being the world's fairest trader. You have definitely sampled his wares. If you've enjoyed a fair trade banana, a cola made with actual cola, or a few years back, tasted a lemonade sweetened with honey. Chris Morrison was the co-founder of Phoenix Organics, when more than 20 years ago, there was no organics industry here. He built the business and the category, and then did something remarkable. He sold and not only worked to mentor the next generation of sustainable businesses, but has gone on to reinvent some of our most ubiquitous consumer goods, the banana and the cola. Talking good business and how he does it, he joins me now. Hey, let's start with Phoenix Organics. What led you to organics back when you were studying?
I did my OE in Canada and did the usual thing, worked in ski resorts and on salmon trawler and all sorts of jobs, and including a health food shop. And got quite interested in organics, and from there came back to New Zealand after being away for 6 years and went to naturopathic college. I was interested in alternative medicine and the health industry in general, and met my wife Deborah. And anyway, to support myself, I was working part-time in a health food shop, and there was an American guy that used to come around with flagons of homemade ginger beer. And one day he said to me, look, I'm going back to the States and just wondered if you'd be interested in taking over the business. And so we did a deal for $50 and I ended up with a ginger beer bug and a couple of customers. So very, very primitive beginnings. We used to collect used Steinlager bottles from behind pubs and take them home and clean them, fill up the bath, soak off the labels, a few cigarette butts that would float out, etc. Put them back into my Thames Trader van, take them downtown and sterilise them at a friendly restaurant who had a bottle steriliser, take them back, and then with a very sophisticated jug and funnel would fill these batches of ginger beer, and then we'd leave them to ferment, and then we would take them round to the very few cafes that were actually around at that time, 1985. So that was the humble beginnings of Phoenix. And about a year later, I met my business partner, Roger Harris, and together, we built Phoenix.
How did you guys go about doing that? You say there weren't many cafes. Were there many places where you could wander in and say, I've got an organic beverage and it's going to cost, a few dollars, and people thought that was a good idea?
Well, there's this funny thing about ginger beer and Kiwis. Everybody seems to have an uncle or aunt or someone in their family or friends who had made homemade ginger beer. So we sort of had it in our blood, really. And so when we turned up, we didn't no labels, just these plain bottles of homemade ginger beer. People were very receptive, and to be honest, there wasn't too much choice at that time. You know, we had the Schweppes and the Coca-Cola and stuff, and that was about all. And so people really liked the idea that this was a different drink, a more healthy drink, and yeah, interesting. So people were very receptive, and it went very well.
How did you go about building out the organic idea? When did the certifications start coming in, and how did you go from being doing it in the kind of back shed to being a business around it?
Yeah, well, one thing led to another, and you know, we used to use somebody's premises at night when they'd finished, and then eventually we got some equipment, and yeah, one thing led to another, and then we came up with a name. I think it first started was Ginger Fizz, and then Roger and I thought about it and thought, well, we want a bigger range than just ginger beer. So anyway, we came up with Phoenix, and yeah, as we got bigger, we were able to get certification. We learnt about pasteurisation, which meant that we could stabilise the drinks and give them a shelf life of 12 months. We added a lemonade, a cola, and a whole lot of other drinks in time. But yeah, no, we were always interested in sustainability and organics, and we always sourced organic ingredients from the very beginning. And you know, to be honest, there wasn't that many people growing organically at the time, and so we did the best that we could. So over time, more and more people got into organics, and thankfully we were able to source all our ingredients organically and get certified.
I mean, it's not a fringe case thing anymore. Every supermarket has organics in it, but you really were pioneering the space. It very much was a fringe interest, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was only a few of us really. It was around that time that Harvest Whole Foods in Grey Lynn started. But besides that, there would have been a couple of other health food stores. There was very little knowledge or availability of organics, so it was interesting times, but exciting as well. And it was an opportunity to grow a business because we're sort of at the forefront, and as people became more and more interested, then our business grew and other businesses came along. It was an exciting time.
Did you ever think that you were crazy and actually, using honey to sweeten drinks and doing things for ethical reasons in the face of the big soda kind of world was just not going to work?
Never really thought about it. I mean, it wasn't to say that it wasn't hard. It certainly was hard, and we had difficult times, but we were really passionate about it, and people were really supportive, and yeah, we never thought about giving up. We just really supported, I guess, by all those stakeholders out there that were interested in what we were doing.
Yeah, that wave of the cafe culture coming, and Phoenix being in every cafe.
Yeah, well, that has been a wonderful relationship with us, and people like Chris Priestley at Atomic and Java Jive, and now it's 121. Was very supportive, and there were a number of people, and we have always looked at wherever good coffee is sold, that was the place where we should have our drinks, and it's still the case today.
In terms of making a business like that work, I mean, were there any times that it nearly went out the back door, or was difficult? And what was it like having young families? Both you and your business partner had young families, and building a business where nothing had existed.
Yeah, it was challenging for sure, and we Deborah and I, no capital, same with Roger, so we could only spend what we earned. It wasn't like we were going out for investment and stuff like that. We pretty much to the very end we remained the shareholders, and we could use the bank a little bit more as we grew, but it was very modest in the early days. But that's a good thing, and you learn that way. It's kind of difficult sometimes for someone who hasn't run a business like this to be given an injection of capital, because you can blow it pretty quickly. So there were a lot of good lessons that we learnt by just, growing as we could afford to.
Tell me about the Methodists. How did they get you out of a tight spot?
Yeah, well, there may have been a time when we needed to buy some equipment to be more efficient and to get our costs down, etc. And like I say, we didn't really have a track record or anything like that, so we really only had the money we were earning or the bank, and the bank wasn't too happy to put too much money into a small business. But there were generous people out there, and one of the organisations that helped us was the Methodist Mission, and they're about employment generation. And so we went and sat down with them and told them our story, and they were very supportive and lent us some money. We paid it back and probably lent some more, and it's been a very good relationship.
And tell me about deciding to sell, as that was something that you'd built up over 20 years, a name that everyone would know. Yeah. It must have been a big decision to decide to move on from it.
It was a big decision, and actually after 20 years we'd built a business that was the largest organic beverage company in Australasia, so it was great to have achieved that. And we weren't looking to sell. We had a lot of people knocking on the door, and we weren't that interested. But one day, Stefan came from Charlie's, and I just felt this was a good fit. We didn't want to sell to a multinational. We didn't want to sell to Coca-Cola. But here's a company that has built up a juice company in New Zealand with New Zealand ethics, and we felt that was quite good. And to be honest, with 4 children and not really ever having holidays or anything like that, it was, you get a little bit tired and look to new adventures and new things to do. And we felt that the timing was good, and it was the right thing to do at the time.
And so after coming out with that exit, you also then decided to start All Good, which is how many more people again than with Phoenix Organics would now know what you've done. Tell me about how you decided to get into bananas.
So All Good is a company set up by Simon Coley, who's ex-42 Below and a great brand guy, and Matthew Morrison, my brother, who's really good on finance, and myself, who had a little bit of experience with business and beverages. And we got together and thought, isn't it strange that, we live in New Zealand, we're in the middle of the Pacific, we've got great neighbours around us like Tonga and Samoa, etc. And why is it that we can't get bananas from them? We used to get all our bananas from our neighbours in the Pacific, and now our bananas come from a long, long way away and run by big multinational corporates that are not that ethical. So we thought, well, is there a way that we could, look at bringing in bananas from Samoa, for example? I had a little bit of a relationship there. So anyway, for a year, we brought in Misaluki bananas, which are like the ladyfinger bananas that they grow here in New Zealand. They're grown organically up there. We persevered. It was difficult. By the time they got here and were ready to eat, they were looking black. Consumers were not used to black bananas. So we then went to dried bananas, and we still bring those in today. And so that was an interesting experience. We didn't know anything about produce. And then from there, we researched it more and realised that there was a market for fair trade bananas, and that had been very successful in Europe. And in the UK, 1 in 3 bananas are fair trade, and Switzerland, 50% of fair trade. And we thought that consumers in New Zealand would support this, so we started to bring in containers of green bananas from a cooperative in Ecuador, El Guabo, and it was a very, very steep learning curve. We threw away quite a few bananas in the beginning, but we learned about ripening, developed a very good relationship with foodstuffs and the organic stores, and it's been a great journey.
It's pretty amazing because of kind of taking on the big soda companies that are kind of the face of, thoughtless capitalism, really, to then move to bananas, which, actually have been tipping over governments all through the world and, responsible for enormous human rights violations and, terrible environmental practices. Yeah. There's some real terrible stuff in the history of bananas. Were you worried getting into it? Has it been crazy like that?
I think we're a little naive, really, to realise exactly what we were getting into, and you're absolutely right. I mean, these are some of the biggest corporations in the world, the Doles and the Chiquitas, etc., Fifes, and their track records haven't been good, but that is an opportunity. That is really an opportunity to tell a more positive story and actually connect the consumers back to the growers, and I think we've done a reasonable job of that. We've been to the cooperative a number of times. We brought out growers out here to New Zealand to talk about what it is, the life of a banana grower for their families and communities, and the positive outcomes from doing it ethically. And it has been, we've been very well supported.
And with your interest in sustainability as well, the banana industry is a massive cautionary tale for what you do if you have a single crop. We're on to something like the third or fourth popular banana because they get a single crop growing around the world and then a blight goes through and it's gone.
Absolutely, I totally agree. We need to support biodiversity. If you have monoculture, you're needing to use a lot of chemicals, etc. And that's the great thing about organics, that organics are supporting the biodiversity, they're supporting the life in the soils, etc. And that's what's interesting, and we need more of it, and we certainly need more of it in New Zealand. I think there's a wonderful opportunity in New Zealand to be the true clean, green country that we get out there and tell everybody we are. Well, I think we've got a long way to go. I think we need to focus on organics and sustainable agriculture, and there's a wonderful opportunity for the markets that we export to.
How do you actually get the first purchase with these things? So when you're bringing bananas in and they're going to be maybe 2 times more expensive than the existing bananas, how do you convince a supermarket to put big space in something that is like that?
I guess you've got to use examples where it's worked well overseas, and there are companies like Sainsbury's, etc., in the UK, which have gone 100% fair trade and not seen a drop-off in the sales of bananas. It's actually gone up. And to talk about ethical consumers and how that is growing, and that how consumers really do care about what they're buying and what they're feeding their families. So there's a lot of research now, and so that's quite convincing. Supermarkets don't want to be left behind, and they want to give choice to consumers, and so actually it's been a reasonably easy sell, and like I say, foodstuffs have been very supportive.
Is it the case of getting like a visionary buyer or someone who becomes your champion in these places? Because I know in other businesses that we've talked to, people say once you get a supermarket or once you get the really big distributor, then the rest kind of falls into place.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly easier with the smaller health food stores. I mean, they're very supportive, and that's their core business, is actually providing clean, green food and ethical food. With the supermarkets, it's more of a business transaction, and so if they can be convinced that there's $1 in it and that it's good for them and that's going to bring in consumers, then that's what compels them.
How many of the All Good bananas are you selling now? I saw a figure somewhere saying that a few years ago it was one bunch every 10 seconds. Where is it now?
Yeah, no, it's grown from there. We bring in at least 3 40-foot containers of bananas every week, and then that's a challenge. I mean, with the banana world, you never know how many bananas are going to be on the market at any given time. So, we have to balance that out, but we're throughout the country and through independent grocery as well. So, yeah, it's growing, and, we've been so successful that actually there's another couple of brands out there as well now. So, yeah, it's good that consumers are getting that choice.
And tell me about moving back into drinks. So you kind of came full circle and then started the Karma Cola and Gingerella and Lemmy Lemonade that everyone would have seen. And I was travelling with work in London, and I kept seeing the little cans all through cafes in London. So it's not just here; it's everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's been very exciting, and I guess having taken on the biggest food companies, fruit companies in the world, we thought, why don't we have a look at fair trade and organic soft drinks? And Phoenix was a fantastic brand, still is. But, we wanted to take it one step further and look at the fair trade, ethical supply of ingredients. And so, with Simon and Matt, we came up with a great brand in Karma Cola. And, we feel that there's still a lot more opportunity. I think there's something like 1.9 billion Coca-Colas sold every day around the world. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
That's amazing. For something that has, negative nutritional value.
Yeah. So we thought, look, if we can get a small stake of that, there's a really good business here. And again, we believe that consumers are really interested in those deep stories. And we're very transparent about all our ingredients. And we have a very special relationship with Sierra Leone where we get our cola nut. And, it has been very well supported. I mean, it's, like any business, there's certainly challenges, and we're looking to really grow this business. We've got an office in London, we bottle in London, got a great team there. We're selling in about 19 countries now. So we're just at the beginning of the journey, but it's very exciting and a lot of support there.
It's pretty amazing, that there is the room for you to do this, considering 1.9 billion cola drinks are sold every day, and yours is one of the only ones that actually uses cola.
Yeah, well, that's really the opportunity, isn't it, to tell people that you have a choice, that you can choose to support something that actually has a positive impact on the growers, has a positive impact right through the supply chain, and that really touches a nerve with people, and people are frustrated, with their choices at times, and people want to do the right thing. So, it's fantastic to give people that opportunity to do it.
You mentioned the banks weren't really there to support small businesses a while ago, and you have through your companies supported small businesses coming up. Has that changed at all? Have we got a more supportive environment for getting money to get these ideas off the ground?
Well, there's different ways of raising money now. Crowdfunding, hasn't been around that long, and it certainly wasn't around when we started. But the banks, they've answering to their shareholders. They've been through financial collapses, etc., and are pretty risk averse. They're always looking to protect any lendings. So it is difficult for people that are starting up. So, that's where I think mentoring is really important, and talking to people about how they structure their businesses in the early days gives them the resilience and the ability to build a sustainable business.
Yeah, what kind of advice do you give young entrepreneurs? Because I know many come to you, and I know you've been involved in networks that have helped them as well. What do you tell people with a dream? And I guess there's two questions. What do you tell them when it's an idea that you think's good, or an idea that you think needs work?
Yeah, well, one of the best pieces of advice, I think, is to be comfortable to go and ask people for advice. I think, most Kiwis are very generous with their time and, are not defensive, etc. So I think, if you see someone out there that you respect or has done something well in business, my advice is, pluck up the courage to give them a call or go around and see them and have a chat. And like I say, most people are very generous, and I think that's good. And surround yourself with good people. I don't really hesitate to tell people if I think, they're not quite on the right track, and maybe even that going into business is not the right thing for them, because it isn't for everybody, and we have a lot of failures in business, and that can be quite taxing, on somebody who's come in with an idea, probably hasn't quite got it right, and then ends up, losing money or, mortgaging their house, etc. That's a very big toll on somebody. So, I think you need to take it slowly, get as much advice as possible, and then go forward.
Yeah, because there's a lot of you out there when you're in business. Like, you're risked in your personal reputation and your finances, but then to come through the other side and to be in a position now, like having set kind of the example with Phoenix, and now making All Good such a mainstream part of consumer society here. Then where are you looking to take the drinks, the Karma Cola drinks? Like, what scale are you guys wanting to get this to? What would be success for you? What's your kind of like, I guess, like, thing that you're almost embarrassed to say about how big you'd like it to get, maybe?
Well, I mean, the ultimate is that every drink sold is ethical and, comes from organic sources, etc. I mean, that would be the ultimate to me. That I don't have any issue with growing bigger. I mean, doing well and growing big is a good thing. Most of the big businesses struggle with ethics and looking further than just their bottom line and return to shareholders. So I want to see more and more good businesses doing well and growing bigger. And back to what we discussed at the beginning, it's we have a bit of a thing in New Zealand about building a business to a certain size and then selling it and buying the batch and the beamer and the house. Whatever, that's comfortable, but we want to do more than that. We really want to influence people. We want to influence other big businesses to say, hey, there's a different way of doing things. And to have successful, big, ethical businesses is a wonderful outcome, for all of us. And, that would be the goal.
And at the moment, you're in 19 countries, you're bottling in the UK, you're in the big supermarkets there with the drinks, and as you say, it's just starting.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we're excited about the future, and we want to sell more drinks.
Yeah, that's magic. Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting to us today, Chris Morrison of All Good. Thank you to Jose Barbosa for producing, and thank you very much for listening. If you're a fan of the Spin-Off podcasts, jump on and give us a rating and a review on iTunes, and get amongst some of the other Spin-Off podcasts. Cheers.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound, and brought to you by The Spin-Off and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tamaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.